there are possibilities available to you as American Muslims that actually aren't available to, say, a French Muslim who's living day by day and, who worries about their kids wearing the hijab in public and who worries about discrimination and worries about, in France, they banned homeschooling now because they realize that so many Muslims were teaching their kids at home. So they've now banned it. You can't even, teach your children at home. You have to send them to the public school so that they can brainwash them. They can give them their propaganda, right? And so life's tough for so many Muslims around the world. I think life is different for you guys, American Muslims. And that requires maybe some thinking about how you will utilize those privileges for the sake of the Ummah. And alhamdulillah, I see some people doing that really well here.
And that's actually, I'm curious to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
I believe what the UK and French Muslims was attempt the isolationist theory, and the American Muslims attempted the integration theory.
Yeah.
American Muslims were attacked heavily by UK Muslims for this integration theory and praised their own isolation theory. What I thought stood so bright in the aftermath of Gaza was how the integration theory was more impactful than the isolation theory. And I think that the reason why, please disagree with me if you think I'm wrong, the reason why French Muslims, man, they're 15% of the French population. Am I right?
Yeah.
They're basically the Black American population in America. I'm not gonna lie to you. If you didn't know that African Americans were 11 to 15% of the nation, you would think they're 50%. That's how much 11 to 15% of a population is actually a lot. Right? So French Muslims, and they have zero impact on their governance. They have, how in the world do you have 15% of the population, yet you have laws being struck against you that you can't fight back in and have no mobilization in? And the same thing in the UK, where I'm like, you guys are like 7%, 6% of the population, correct?
Yeah, 6%, yeah.
And I feel like there's very little compared to American Muslim impact. So do you think which one was more successful, the integration or the isolation? Because you can hear from my bias that I think the integration was the more successful theory.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more nuanced or complex than that. That's my take on it. I don't think British Muslims very overtly had like an isolationist strand. Far from it. But I think it's about the opportunities that are available to you and access you have to civil society and to education and to those things that help you to become better communities. So let's take the French example as an example. In France, the entire society works against you. I mean, I think it would be unfair to say and to blame the French Muslim for the state they're in many ways, because the entire system works against you from schooling age, to university, to occupations. I mean, sisters in France who wear hijab cannot get jobs because of the overt discrimination that exists in French society. I mean, you can't, if you have a Muslim sounding name, you're not going to get even an interview in France, right?
Really? I didn't know that.
It's tough. It's really tough in France. Muslims are marginalized, and they're purposely marginalized. Even access to creating institutions, like you guys have institutions here. Every institution that has any weight in French society has been shut down. Civil Liberties Institution, CCIF, was one of the, CARE or, the cage of France. This is a civil liberties organization. And that's what they did, shut them down on some false pretext, right? The biggest two charities in France, French Muslim charities that did a lot of relief work for, the Muslim world, shut down because supposedly money was going to terrorism or extremism, which was of course, a nonsense. Imams have been thrown out of the country. There's one imam who all he did in the Eid prayer is he recited the Prophet's last sermon. He just read the sermon out. And that was publicized. And, in the sermon, he talks about women and their responsibility and men in their responsibility. And that got to government, and government said this is anti-French. Not only did they ban the imam because he was not a passport holder, he wasn't a citizen, they removed him from the country. They banned him from the country. And this was an imam that was in the country for many years, right? Mosques have been shut down in France. Hundreds of mosques have been shut down. Islamic schools have been shut down. You don't have an Islamic school really anymore in France, but the entire thing has been shut down. So I think it would be unfair to say that they have the same opportunities that you have in America. Far from it, right?
Do you think that America was, because everything that you're saying just sounds like America post 9/11 though, from America from 2001
Yeah.
to 2010.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know enough about America post 9/11, but I would say, having said that, the degree to which the repression exists in France is probably not close to where, what happened in France is far stronger upon the individual lives of the French Muslim than probably what happened in America. Certainly in America, you had surveillance and you had some charities that were shut down and people were put into prison unlawfully. And we had all of that. And the Constitution was interrupted by, the Patriot Act. And, certainly you had
Mosques shut down, imams imprisoned.
Right, but I think what the French Muslim face, you have to see it to believe it. Actually, what the French Muslim face is intense. And of course, you had a period of that intensity and that somewhat relaxed. And now, alhamdulillah, you're in a different situation. We have some ability to breathe here,
Right.
a lot of ability to breathe. In France, it's been relentless for decades, by the way. Like, it's not just something that's happened. If anything, every year they're turning the screw even further. You'd think, okay, they've got to a point now where there's nothing more you can do to the Muslim community. And then they would pass, like recently, there was this entire report that was published based on fabrication. And the report was that Muslims are infiltrating different parts of the state organism in France, right? And they've now infiltrated such and such ministry and they've infiltrated. And that's ridiculous. Muslims are nowhere near that. But this thing was given currency in the press and it's now become popularized and everyone believes it. Like Muslims have infiltrated, like a Trojan horse, infiltrated the state. And it's laughable because if anything, Muslims have very little access to civic society. So I think we can say in France that the isolation that Muslims face is not purposeful. It's actually because they've been maligned to such a degree by the political elites that they could only, in order to retain their identity, they had to live together and they had to work together in a way in which they could resist the forces of state that really came down upon them day by day, month by month, right?
Yeah. And I would love to have on a French
Yeah,
Muslim because I really don't know enough about that
yeah,
society.
yeah.
One thing though is where do you think what do you think the solution? What do you think their strategy should be? How do we help them, if at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. And one of the things I want to do is actually visit France because I know a lot of French Muslims. I met a delegation of French Muslims in Malaysia who were there and we were talking about ideas. And unfortunately, or fortunately, what's happening is those Muslims who can get out are getting out. So there are Muslims who are leaving France to Muslim countries, to other Western countries. And so what you're having is a brain drain of educated Muslims who have an ability to leave. They're leaving. Young families are leaving. If you go to Istanbul, you'll see a large number of French families that have left France, right? So if you can escape, you escape. But of course, that leaves behind 6 million Muslims who can't escape, right? Because of socioeconomic circumstances. They're not going to be able to set up shop in a different country. So hijrah, in that idea isn't an option for them. How can we help them? I think from outside, we've got to shed more light on what is happening to the Muslim community in France. And we've got to do more to keep their stories alive, because at the moment they feel that not very many Muslims in Muslim Ummah know exactly what's happening in France. Because in a sense, it's unbelievable to think that a so-called Western liberal society could treat a minority in such a way.
It doesn't sound like a Western liberal society to me from what you're saying.
The French Interior Minister, he once gave a speech where he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I wrote an article about this, where he said that when it comes to Allah or the state, and he purposely used the word Allah to maim us, to hurt us, right? He could have said Islam, or he said, when it comes to Allah or the state, French Muslims need to know that the state is above Allah, right? Now think about why he used the word Allah, because that hurts. You feel that pain when I just said it. I feel it doesn't sit right? Because he's trying to say that your ultimate God, effectively, when it comes to living, has got to be the French Republic. It's got to be the secular state, and not Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And that at the end, that was a purposeful choice of words. This French interior minister went into a supermarket, like it's just a general supermarket. And it's the forces of supply and demand. This is in a Muslim area. So the supermarket had an aisle with halal meats and halal products, right? And he said, I was outraged that a mainstream supermarket could have halal products. That's a sign of separatism. So they call that separatism, this idea of isolation. Now, that's not a sign of separatism. That's a sign of how, Islam or Muslims are mainstreaming, right? Because your products are in a mainstream supermarket. But even those really innocuous activities are regarded by the French state as separatism. The French state basically want you to not be a Muslim.
They want you not to be any religion.
Yeah.
The flavor of secularism in France differs from the UK and in America in that it's not just separation of church and state. It's like you said, it's state over church.
Yeah. Yes, it's true. Although the other religions do not get that level of treatment that Muslims do. I think Muslims are being exceptionalized there because they see the potency of Islam and Muslims. They see how important Islam is to our lives. Catholics aren't treated like that. Jews are certainly not treated like that in France.
No.
So I think we are exceptionalized in France.